The Heads That Waited, prologue. History is full of lies, full of manipulations, distortions, some ideological, others romantic, and a few simply absurd. The stone heads are not what we believe, because they don't just stare at the horizon, they guard a story that science still doesn't understand or perhaps prefers to hide. An older story, the one of the Moai that were already here, waiting for the Polynesians. Imagine this, you. In the middle of the Pacific, where the map fades into blue, a triangle of land rises, Rapa Nui. An island so remote, it feels like a joke of the gods, an impossible bet, lost in the vastest ocean on Earth. An extraordinary island, not only for its isolation, but because its culture defies every simple explanation. On April 9th, 1722, the Dutch navigator Jacob Roggeveen, searching for the Moluccas, sighted it. A Sunday of Easter. That's why the name. He called it Pash Island, Easter Island, and so by sheer translation remained the name the world still repeats today. But listen, when the Europeans landed, they didn't find ruins, nor emptiness. They found a living people, yes, alive, with their own language, temples and cults, and statues gazing at the horizon, as if waiting for someone who never returned. No one could explain how they had arrived there, nor where they came from, only that they existed. A culture, as complex as it was solitary, that didn't fit with anything known. Anthropologists spoke of migrations, missionaries of miracles, travelers of ghosts, and each theory opened more questions than answers. Because in Rapa Nui, everything seems to have happened outside of time. The stones speak of an ancient greatness, while written history barely dares to record 1,000 years of life. The locals call it Tapito Tehenua, the navel of the world. And sometimes, navels are not beginnings, they are scars. Perhaps Rapa Nui is not the beginning of anything, but the last echo of something that existed before the sea, reclaimed its memory. 5 mysteries await you, 5 traces that defy official history. The impossible voyage, the impossible fruit, the impossible writing, the impossible stone, and the faces that still remember. Because if history doesn't fit, perhaps the problem is not in the stones, but in those who look at them. Mystery 1. The Impossible Route. They say the story of Rapa Nui has 2 voices. If the Europeans tell it, it's history. If the Rapa Nui tell it, it's myth. The first ones arrived with compasses and notebooks. The others already had chants, gods, and bloodlines. From that moment on, the island remained divided between what was written in ink and what continued to be told by voice. Modern science claims that the first inhabitants arrived a little over 1,200 years ago. Navigators of the Pacific, probably from Samoa or Tonga, who followed the stars in search of new lands. But the local account says something different. It speaks of 2 peoples, the Hanau Momoko and the Hanau Ipe. Some were already there, others came later. For Rapa Nui memory, there was a story before history, and a sea that swallowed its own map. According to the academic version, the first settlers set sail from Samoa or Tonga between the years 800 and 1200 after Christ, heading east. But that route crosses the South Pacific against both the currents and the winds. The main currents of the South Pacific turn counterclockwise. The South Equatorial carries water from America toward Polynesia. The East Australian flows downward. The South Pacific runs eastward, and the Humboldt climbs along the South American coast. Meanwhile, the trade winds blow from the southeast to the northwest almost all year, pushing vessels from America toward Polynesia, not the other way around. That means sailing from Samoa to Rapa Nui would have been to go against the entire sea. The journey spans about 6,600 kilometers, like trying to find a grain of sand in an ocean of glass. Rapa Nui covers barely 160 square kilometers in an ocean of 165 million. The chance of finding it without compass or reference points would be less than 1 in a million. Polynesian canoes weren't large, between 20 and 60 people per vessel. Even modern double-hulled replicas barely carry a dozen crew members. To found a viable population, at least 150 or 200 people would be needed. And here enters a factor rarely mentioned: inbreeding. When a group is too small, generations end up crossing among relatives. The result is predictable: Malformations, hereditary diseases, loss of fertility. Genetics narrows until life itself becomes impossible. That's why one canoe could never create a civilization. It would have taken at least 8, perhaps 30, departing with 300 or 600 people, plus water, food and space for a months-long voyage. Logistically impossible. Science tried to save face with the idea of successive waves, as if several fleets had found the same rock in the middle of the Pacific again and again. But that only makes the improbable worse. If we follow the currents, navigators would have reached New Zealand first, larger, clearer, unmistakable. And yet, it was colonized centuries later. In 1947, Thor Heyerdahl sailed from Peru on a raft called Kon-Tiki. With ancestral materials and no instruments, he crossed nearly 7,000 kilometers to Polynesia, proving the journey was possible, but in the opposite direction, from America toward the west. The ocean, not theory, dictated the route. If everything fits so poorly, the question changes. What if the island was already inhabited when the navigators arrived? The myths hint at it. The Momoko, the ancients, already lived there. The Epe, the newcomers, sought refuge from the rising waters. 2 peoples, 1 island, a meeting that ended in silence. Science, faced with the inexplicable, adjusts models, recalibrates dates, but the ocean doesn't read papers and stones don't lie. Each Moai, each wall seems to repeat the same thing. There was something before. The submerged corridor. Around 20,000 years ago, sea levels were between 120 and 150 meters lower. The Nazca and Salas y Gomez ridges then formed a chain of islands linking South America with eastern Polynesia. Oceanographic studies found coral fossils atop those peaks, today more than 100 meters deep. And corals don't grow in darkness, they need light. That proves those lands once stood in sunlight, exposed to air. When the glaciers melted, the sea rose and that corridor sank slowly. Roots broke, cultures became isolated, and memories drifted into myth. But beneath the water, geography still tells the story. 3,000 kilometers of volcanic mountains connect the ridges. Their marine species are unique, many resembling those of the Indo-Pacific more than the South American. The sea still breathes as it did then, linking east and west. Between 12 and 10,000 years before the Polynesian era, the first navigators used those islands as stepping stones. When the sea rose, Rapa Nui was left alone. The Momoko survived. The rest of the world drowned. And here comes my theory. Rapa Nui was settled long before science dares to accept, during the glaciation, when sailing across the Pacific was as natural as crossing a valley. The ocean didn't separate peoples, it connected them. Then came oblivion, and the water erased the map. But the island remained, as a witness. That's why I believe the only way for history to make sense, without forcing currents or miracles of navigation, is this. Rapa Nui was not the end of the Polynesian voyage, but its point of departure, lost in time. And if one day science dares to look beneath the waters of the Pacific, perhaps it will discover that the stones have been saying it for thousands of years. Mystery 2. The language of stone. If you agree with me, if you already sense that Rapa Nui may have been inhabited long before the sea rose and erased the paths, then this new mystery will blow your mind. Because if the impossible routes of the Pacific already shook the logic of science, what comes next shakes the entire map of human history. In the middle of the largest ocean on Earth, on an island Europeans once believed primitive, a form of writing appeared. Not a drawing, nor a decoration, a true sequence of signs carved on wood, as ancient as it is inexplicable. They called it Rongorongo, and it is the only known writing in all of Polynesia. As far as official history goes, no culture in that region, neither Tonga, Samoa, nor Tahiti, had alphabets, pictograms, or anything similar before European contact. The Polynesians were a people of oral tradition. They sang their history. They didn't write it. That's why, when the first European explorers saw those tablets covered in symbols, no one knew where they had come from or what they meant. For decades, it was thought to be a recent invention, a fantasy born after contact, until someone dared to compare. The glyphs of Rongorongo were aligned with Egyptian hieroglyphs, with Sumerian cuneiform, with Mayan lines. Nothing. The similarities didn't even reach 1%. But when they were compared with the Proto-Indian script of the Indus Valley, the story changed. 12% structural and geometric coincidence, 12 times more than with any other writing on the planet. 12 out of every 100 symbols shared the same visual logic: human figures, animals, gestures, branches, motion strokes, too much order to be coincidence. And then came the question no one dared to ask. How could an island script, lost in the middle of the Pacific, so closely resemble that of an ancient Asian civilization, separated by 15,000 kilometers and 3 millennia of history? According to official chronology, the Indus civilization flourished between 2600 and 1900 before Christ, and its script appeared even earlier, around 3300. But those signs already existed when the region was still semi-nomadic. How could a people without cities have a proto-writing so complex? The simplest answer is also the most unsettling. That script didn't originate there. Think of Mohenjo-Daro, the city that fell asleep. When archaeologists unearthed it, they found dozens of skeletons in the streets, many lying as if at rest, some holding hands. No wounds, no signs of battle, no ritual burials, just bodies, as if death had surprised them in the middle of life. Official theories spoke of epidemics or floods, but none explain why no one fled, and even less why certain areas showed vitrified stone and pottery as if they had been fused by extreme heat. Classical archaeologists dismissed the idea. Other researchers spoke of an unknown energetic event. If there had been intense radiation there, the result would have been devastating. Collective sudden death and a complete distortion of carbon-14 dating. Because radiation alters the atomic balance that method uses as its clock. A burst of neutrons can make remains appear much younger or much older than they really are. We know today that radiation is not eternal. In Chernobyl, where it was believed nothing would live for centuries, nature returned in less than 40 years. In Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the cities were inhabited again within years. The bombs exploded in the air, and the radioactive rain dissipated quickly. The most lethal isotopes, iodine-131, cesium-137, strontium-90, disappear or become inert within decades. Only a minimal fraction of plutonium or uranium persists, and even that becomes undetectable after millennia. That's why if Mohenjo-Daro suffered something like that more than 10,000 years ago, no trace would remain today. Time erases radiation just as the sea erased the islands of the Pacific corridor. And if it all happened before, if we accept that possibility, everything fits. The script of the Indus would not be the first in the world, but the last survivor of a global symbolic language, one that existed before a catastrophe wiped out its carriers. A tradition that might have spread when the seas were lower, when the roots of stone and water still connected what is now divided. If that network of knowledge once existed, then Rongorongo could be its most distant echo, carved on an island that survived oblivion. The Rapa Nui people may no longer have remembered their origin, but they still kept the signs, symbols of a language that survived the flood, though no one could read it anymore. And perhaps that is the key. Not every language needs ink. There is a tongue that uses no words but joints, that doesn't speak with sounds but with weight and geometry. The ancients spoke it in stone, in Egypt, in the Andes, in India, in the Pacific Islands. The same H-shaped blocks, the same angles, the same proportions, as if they were signatures from a single school of builders. If Rongorongo was the writing of the sages, these joints were the writing of the architects. And both say the same thing in different tongues. There was a civilization before, and the stones are its alphabet. Mystery 3, the corridor, the Kumara and the fire. For a long time, official history believed that Rapa Nui had lived in isolation from the world, that its people, its gods and its songs had been invented in solitude, but modern genetics came to ruin that calm. And oh, it did. In the year 2020, an international group of scientists, Stanford, universities from the Americas and the Pacific, decided to look at blood under a microscope. They analyzed the DNA of more than 800 people from 17 Polynesian islands and 15 indigenous nations of South America. The result? a finding that changed everything. Polynesians and Americans had already met about 800 years ago, centuries before the first European ever arrived. The genes spoke clearer than the chroniclers. Rapa Nui, Mangariva, and the Marquesas shared fragments of DNA with the coasts of Ecuador and Colombia. And in Rapa Nui blood, there still remains about 10% of American ancestry. No suppositions, no romanticism. Facts, real voyages. Human encounters the sea kept better than the books. And what's curious is that the story didn't go one way. There are also Polynesian traces in America. The Pacific wasn't a wall, it was a bridge. 3 clues tell it better than any speech. A plant, a bird, and a custom. The kumara, the chicken, and the fire. The kumara, the American sweet potato, was born in the highlands of Bolivia and Peru. The Polynesians adopted it, carried it from island to island, and most astonishing of all, they kept its name. Kumara in Quechua and Aymara means root, and that root crossed the ocean. On every island, the word survived with its own accent, like an ancient melody. Kumara in New Zealand, Kumara in the Cook Islands, Uala in Hawaii, Umala in Samoa, Umara in Tahiti, and of course, Kumara in Rapa Nui. Different lands, one word, one memory. Coincidence? No. It's the linguistic footprint of a journey that truly happened. Because when a word repeats itself across islands separated by thousands of kilometers, it means someone carried it there. The chicken, on the other hand, traveled the opposite way. In 2007, a Chilean and New Zealand team analyzed bones found on the Chilean coast. The DNA matched the Lapita lineage of Polynesian origin. And the dating was implacable, between the years 1300 and 1400, before the arrival of Columbus. That means the Polynesians had already reached America centuries before Europe even knew it existed. And between the plant and the bird, the fire. Across Polynesia and southern Chile, people cook the same way. A pit in the earth, hot stones, fresh leaves, and the food buried to cook in its own steam. Kuranto Umuhangi, 3 names, one same ceremony, a shared recipe that survived the ocean. Fire is the oldest language in the world, and when people separated by thousands of kilometers cook the same way, there's not much left to explain. The contact existed, you just had to hear it crackle. The DNA, the words, the food, the hot stone, everything points to the same truth. The Pacific was not a boundary, it was a bridge. A blue highway that connected worlds before the word map even existed. And every time someone lights a Kuranto beneath the sand, the fire tells the story again. Because roots, voyages, and memories never truly go out. Mystery 4, the stones that speak. They say the modern world began 5,000 years ago. But if you open your eyes and your maps, you'll find something unsettling. The entire planet is filled with ruins that don't fit their time. And when archaeologists don't understand something, they tuck it away into one of 3 magic drawers: temple, tomb, or astronomical calendar. Convenient, isn't it? But when the same patterns repeat across continents, the right word is no longer coincidence, it's memory. So let's take a trip, a journey from stone to stone, crossing seas and millennia. First stop, Micronesia. Nan Madol, the city of basalt that floats upon canals, thousands of hexagonal columns stacked like logs on an island with no mountains from which to quarry them. No one knows how or why it was built, only that it's there, remembering something. From there we leap to Japan. At the bases of ancient castles, cyclopean walls fit together as if the stone had once been soft, blocks with bound corners, smooth curves, a precision art modern concrete can't even mimic. Next, China. In forgotten quarries lie colossal blocks, half-freed, too large to move, too perfect to be random. A work stopped or interrupted that proves one thing: intention. We descend to India. In Ellora, the temple of Kailasa wasn't built, it was released from the mountain. They carved from the top down, hollowing the basalt. They removed more stone than in the Great Pyramid, and no one ever found the debris. The official version: centuries of manual work. Sure, centuries, with copper chisels. We turn toward the Mediterranean. Baalbek, Lebanon. Blocks over 1,000 tons, fitted with the delicacy of a jeweler. They say they were moved with ropes and logs. Of course, and I lift a train with a rubber band. We move on to Greece. The Greeks called them Cyclopean walls, and not because of mythology. They meant literally built by the gods. When a technique is lost, myths rise to replace it. We descend the Nile, Egypt, pyramids, temples, the Osirian of Abydos, underground and millimetric, the polish of granite, the protruding knobs at the base of Khafre, identical to Cusco. The same joints, the same angles, the same hand. And when you see it with your own eyes, you realize official history doesn't add up anywhere. We cross the Atlantic, the Valley of Mexico, Teotihuacan, the place where men become gods. The Aztecs found it abandoned and thought it divine. From there we go south. The Olmec heads weighing dozens of tons move through swamps without the wheel, the stone spheres of Costa Rica, perfect to the point of absurdity. And then the Andes, Cusco, Sacsayhuaman, Ollantaytambo, Pumapunku, blocks that fit with gentle curves as if the stone had once been soft, others vitrified, melted by extreme heat. I saw them with my own eyes, literally vitrified, and not even a modern furnace could do that in open air. How do you soften a mountain without industrial fire? How do you interlock a rock that seems to have been kneaded? I don't know, but someone did. And on the other side of the Pacific, Rapa Nui. At Vinapú, the back wall of an ahu joins basalt blocks with the same precision as Cusco. Two distant shores, one identical technique. I'm not saying one copied the other. I'm saying both remembered the same thing. Look closely at the map we just traveled. From Micronesia to the Andes, from India to Rapa Nui, the same language of stone. The H-shaped keys, the wedges, the impossible joints, an alphabet carved by hands that spoke a wordless tongue. That is the ancient lithic tradition, a culture that needed neither paper nor electricity to leave its mark. Its ink was time, its pen, patience. And yes, there's a line of fear and power behind all this. Official chronologies aren't innocent. If time is longer than we were told, scriptures tremble, and with them, religions, empires, certainties. So when I say it's the same hand, I'm not talking mysticism, but geometric intuition. The same angles, the same cuts, the same obsession with perfect fit. No need to imagine extraterrestrials. It's enough to accept that there were humans who knew more, about matter, about balance, about vibration, and that we are the ones who forgot. And if you still doubt there was a common language, look closely at this form, the H. You'll find it in Cusco, Rapa Nui, Egypt, Pumapunku, Indonesia, Greece, Japan. A letter of stone carved by civilizations that never met. A universal signature repeating the same stroke, as if to say, we were here. And when you close the map, look where the journey began, in the Pacific, in Nan Madol. The first and the last stop, the point where the circle closes, and the ocean reminds us that all this, once, was connected. That's why, when I hear comfortable explanations like they were tombs or temples for the gods, I smile a little, because if in some distant future, another rebirth of humanity, someone found a modern museum and saw a toilet hanging in an art gallery, they'd surely say, this must have been a ceremonial altar. History tends to confuse function with form, and to fill ignorance with gods. We don't need to talk about extraterrestrials, we need to talk about humans with long memory, about peoples who knew things that we forgot. You want me to say it was coincidence? Perfect. But first, travel. See it with your own eyes, and then tell me. Mystery 5. The Guardians of Oblivion. They say that when the sea rises, it doesn't just swallow land, it swallows memory. And if that's true, then the Moai of Rapa Nui aren't statues, they're reminders. Because on no other island on Earth did such a small people leave such a colossal legacy. More than 800 stone figures stand on cliffs and slopes, facing inland, as if watching over the living, or guarding a secret the ocean has already forgotten. Each one weighs between 10 and 100 tons, and without wheels, without beasts of burden, without metal, they still moved them. Not to worship, but to remember. The quarry of the Rano Raraku volcano still stands there, like a frozen photograph of the end of an era. Hundreds of figures half-carved, some buried to the neck, others with unfinished eyes. It looks as if the carvers had left one midday and never returned. No battle, no looting, just an interruption, a silence that still weighs. Archaeologists spoke of tribal wars, droughts, deforestation, but none of those theories explain why a people capable of moving mountains suddenly decided to stop, nor how they transported statues the size of airplanes over steep hills and volcanic ash. Modern theories say they walked them. Yes, rocked them forward as if they were alive. And in fact, the ancients said so too, that the Moai walked on their own. The difference is, they didn't mean it as a metaphor. The Rapa Nui didn't believe the Moai were gods. They believed they were ancestors. Each figure embodied a protective spirit, an echo of those who came before. That's why, when the eyes were placed, they looked toward the people, not the sea. They didn't guard the coast, they guarded memory. And perhaps that's why, when everything collapsed, they toppled them. Not out of rage, but out of mourning. Like someone who takes down a cross because there's no one left to pray. Some fell face down, others half buried, and time turned them into myths of stone. But beneath the soil, their full bodies remained, covered by centuries of sediment, with carvings etched on their backs, marks no one can read. Perhaps words, perhaps the last sentence of an extinct tongue. The Moai are the faces of the civilization before, the last witnesses of the language of stone that once united the world. Vinapú and Cusco share their technique, the walls of the Ahu and the Andean terraces, their geometry. Everything points to the same inheritance, a knowledge that crossed the sea before the sea became a frontier. And if you look from above, the Moai aren't scattered. They form lines, patterns, trajectories. It looks like a map, perhaps of the world that existed before the water. Perhaps of the path that brought them here. I don't know if they were guardians, engineers, or prophets, but I do know they understood something we've forgotten, that stone can speak, if one knows how to listen. And yes, when you stand before them, you feel it. It's not devotion, nor fear. It's a mix of vertigo and respect, as if those hollow gazes knew more about time than we do. Perhaps the Moai weren't built to be seen, but to ensure we never forget. A warning carved in silence, a voice that endured the ocean, history, and us. And as long as the sea keeps breaking against the shores of Rapa Nui, they'll remain there, upright, worn, watching the wind. Because even oblivion needs its guardians. Epilogue. The memory of the waters. The sea is in no hurry. It knows that everything it forgets, one day it returns. Perhaps that's why the stones keep speaking, not with words, but with persistence. Because true writing isn't found in books or codes, but in what resists time. Vinapú, Cusco, Elora, Saqqara, Nan Madol, they all tell the same story, but in different tongues. And when a civilization forgets its language, it's the stones that become its memory. Science says everything is dated, measured and ordered, that the Moai were carved with stones, that the walls were built with copper hammers, and that civilizations invented themselves one after another, as if human genius bloomed by contagion. But a single question is enough to make the museum crumble. Where are the debris from what they carved out of the mountain? How do you move 1,000,000 kilos without pulleys or steel? Why does a lost island repeat the geometry of Cusco and the syntax of Mohenjo-Daro? That's when silence appears. And that silence sometimes says more than all the theses, because every we don't know is a door left slightly open. And on the other side, there are no gods or extraterrestrials. There are humans. Humans who knew how to listen to the earth, who measured the sky with shadows, and who understood that matter too remembers. Perhaps what we call progress is nothing more than the sum of all our forgettings. And perhaps the future, if there is one, lies not in inventing more, but in remembering better. When you stand before a Moai, you're not looking at the past, you're looking into a mirror of stone. A mirror that throws back the question we all avoid. Are we really the first civilization? The sea rises and falls, theories change, temples erode, but the stone remains. And as long as it remains, there is still hope. Paper burns, hard drives decay, theories change every decade, and maybe that's why the ancient cultures chose stone as their language, because rock doesn't lie. If something you've seen made you think, tell me in the comments. I always enjoy reading you and talking with you there, and if you don't want to miss the next episodes, subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell. Let's keep exploring together those questions that change history.